Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome co-CEO and President, Peter McKay.
Hello, everybody. I love that video because both of those guys, Maurizio Carli runs worldwide sales for VMware, and Sanjay Poonen, who will be up here very shortly, is the COO of VMware. And both of those guys were my bosses at VMware. And Sanjay was very, I'm going to call Sanjay Poonen, come on up on stage here. This is an exciting part of this next stage. And Sanjay, it's an honor to have you here.
Thank
you. It's exciting to see you. Who would have thought we would be on the same stage together?
Yes.
So,
pleasure. Great.
Do you remember the first big? So we started at VMware almost the same time, right? Do you remember that first big decision you had to make when you came to VMware?
Yes, we acquired your company, Desktop.
That's it. And what's happened? What happened to the end user computing group once that happened?
It was a big moment. I still remember my first meeting with Peter, and I'm here, I should say, first off, really as a guest of Peter, and we're a big fan of his at VMware. He went on from the CEO of Desktone to run our end user computing business from the standpoint of our sales, and then we promoted him to run Americas, and then he's now, co-CEO of Veeam. Yeah. I don't know. Well, you can run for president of the United States next.
No, president of the United States.
But we're very excited, and this partnership means a lot to us, not just in the context of end user computing, the business that I ran in the past, but just watching you guys doing all these great demos that integrate so deeply into our data center products, whether it's vSAN, whether it's vSphere, whether it's vRealize, Login Site. You guys have been great partners, and that's the reason I'm here.
That's awesome. And you've done a fantastic, when you came over from SAP into End User Computing Group, we built the business up, and you did a fantastic job of really crushing Citrix in the market. So
well, it's been a team effort, and the team that you brought in really brought us. For us, I think the big idea, and every company I think has a big idea, right, was really taking this traditional legacy sort of type of space that had been viewed as costly, as complex VDI to the cloud. Yeah. You brought that innovation to us. I think, it's not just the refresh of your logo and all this great stuff that you're doing. I have to get some green socks, by the way.
I'll get you some.
Right. So that's good. Like the
Ratmer knows how to get a sale. Three for one.
The Irish will be jealous of your green. But I think the big idea is really how do you transform a company given what are the top priorities to organizations, and that's been for us one of the key things. If I think about the CIO priorities today in infrastructure, I think the top three are cloud, mobile, and security. And you don't have to be playing relevant to all of those, but you have to be playing at least to one of those. And the way in which I think you are addressing cloud, the way in which we're addressing cloud, and cloud doesn't mean that everybody automatically moves to the public cloud. There's a number of folks who are thinking about how they modernize the private cloud or on-premise to look like a public cloud as they prepare to doing that. Right. So everything you do to allow disaster recovery, backup, and all of the availability, so that when you get ready for stuff that's going to sit in a hybrid world, and that's been our vision with VMware Cloud Foundation. So whether it's Desktone that helped us move Horizon to the cloud, or the way in which we're thinking about what we're doing, in our VMware Cloud Foundation now with AWS. Yesterday we announced that we're making available our Horizon Cloud on Azure. We live in a multi-cloud world.
That's great. That's what we talked about for a while, and we were together at VMware. So when you think of the partnership, the VMware Veeam partnership, why do you think that's, I mean, obviously we both built our businesses around virtualization, but why do you think that the partnership has done so well over the years?
Well, I think everything that we do, and all of us should do, is to focus on the customer. And when you get the customer in the middle of any deep partnership, so you have, I'm listening to your stats here, 230,000 odd customers. We have about twice that number, 500,000 customers. And I bet the bulk of you here who are customers of Veeam have heard of VMware, are VMware customers. Yep. So we deeply appreciate that. You probably go to both conferences here and to VMworld. And when we can take these concepts and make this very successful for you, so here's just a few that I've outlined on this slide. For example, really making the private cloud a reality with the kinds of things that we're doing together. We believe fundamentally that there is going to be a world of hybrid where you will have on-premise, you will have private cloud, and you'll have public cloud. Yeah. And as you do this, the two things we hear most often from these customers who are thinking about moving to the cloud are two topics: security and availability. Right. Okay, you're right smack in the second one of those.
I got one of them.
And as we think about our offering, for example, in VMware Cloud Foundation and AWS, we have targeted a few ISVs, and you're on that special list, that we want to work with so that you can be right there with us as we make VMware Cloud Foundation. And the whole idea of everything we do at VMware in terms of disruptive innovation is to attack the two C's, cost and complexity. And if we could help with our joint partnership, Peter, make that cost and complexity just go away for many of these customers as they modernize their private clouds, I think we win.
That's great. And I've been watching, obviously, the VMware business over the past 2-3 quarters. It's really taken off. Right. Ratmir attributes that to me leaving, and the stock actually goes up.
You were a hard act to follow.
What do you attribute that success being?
I think as you think about the nature of this cloud revolution, that's going on, you have to work backwards from every strategic vendor, whether your size or our size or bigger, continuing to be a trusted advisor to their customers. All of you customers are going to keep working with us if we're a trusted advisor to you. And when we looked at that from the lens and asked ourselves, what are the two biggest threats that could completely disintermediate VMware, and then work backwards from that? Yeah. The two big threats were cloud and the movement to public cloud, and containers. And we began to fully embrace that over the course of that. Now those changed from a headwind to a tailwind. So I have sort of a handful of pieces of advice as I think about the cloud in our own view of the cloud revolution. Number one, we believe that hybrid cloud computing is here to stay. It absolutely is going to be the way in which many of you think about your world, especially if you're small or big. Number two, as you think about your cloud strategy, typically you want to make sure your SaaS apps are moving in that direction. Today, if you're buying a CRM app, you're probably likely thinking of a Salesforce. Similarly, if you're thinking about email, you're probably looking at Google Mail or Office 365. And then IaaS and PaaS. It's literally those, but if you can do those three in parallel. Number three, as you think about this, is the point I made yesterday. Security is really, really important, and there's both an aspect of network and data security, and you're right smack in the data security. Number four, I personally think that this notion, and I might defend a few analysts, this notion of bimodal IT is dead. You really need to be thinking about doing things in an agile fashion as opposed to, here's my cloud group, here's my on-premise group, and never the two will meet or we'll have them fight between each other. And then the final thing, which we had to learn, because many of you know our efforts with our own public cloud was something we divested. We started down this effort of vCloud Air and we pulled out of that. But we learned a lot from that, and I encourage folks, as you work together, it's better to fail forward. In other words, it's okay to try and fail, just don't make the same mistake repeatedly, or as Einstein said, if you make the same thing over and over again, it's insanity. But fail forward rather than not try at all.
That's right. When you and I have been in the industry for a while, I think I've been a lot longer than you. What do you see?
Not that much, man.
Yeah,
we're close there.
And you see kind of what we've experienced in the past. What do you, when you look to the future, and how significant is the magnitude of change you think we're going to see over the next 5-10 years?
I mean, you need to look no further than something like AWS. You have Azure here tomorrow. But both of these phenomenons, who would have thought 5-10 years ago this division of Amazon would become the profit center for this big company and just become a phenomenon in infrastructure? Who would have thought that Microsoft today wouldn't be just a Windows company, but really driven by the intelligent cloud? That is what's happening in our world. So if you are an ostrich with your head in the sand, you deny that and you start living the way people. But if you embrace that, that's really what we start doing in the cloud. And I think that the cloud is certainly one big key aspect of it. Now, let's talk about the other one I didn't talk about earlier, containers. From our perspective, we think that containers will be a place that augment the way in which the hypervisor and server virtualization works. So we've embraced it, both in the context of what we do with our own container stack, Photon, and so on, but also what we're doing with our partner company, Pivotal, in terms of the cloud-native application stack. because we're seeing tremendous amount of, so we embraced that. We created a OpenStack distribution called VMware Integrated OpenStack. We embraced Kubernetes, and now with Cloud Foundry, announced last week at Dell EMC World, a developer-ready infrastructure that is the combination of a software-defined data center with all the great benefits you showed in your demos, and a cloud-native app platform on top of that. Okay, you take that combination together, embracing the open source types of movements like Kubernetes and Docker, you then have, incredible amount of agility combined with some of the things that we do in security like nobody else, like NSX. We think that combination brings a tremendous amount of advantage to developers and operations. The sort of developer and operations groups have been fighting each other. One's thinking they're not moving fast enough. We really want, the whole idea of DevOps is bringing those two groups together. So we'd love to take, as you kind of continue to adapt more of our tooling, and we move up that developer-ready infrastructure stack and embrace that, we want to make sure every one of you who are typically probably here in the operations group can see these worlds coming together.
So you got a lot of IT people here, a lot of different business units. Any advice, last question, for them as they kind of look to the future? Anything you see, because you talk to a tremendous amount of customers and you're traveling the globe, what advice would you give them?
I think, if you look at some of these logos, you had a few of the logos in here, and we really want to serve every one of you by learning from you what are some of the best practices. A lot of the feature capabilities that you saw from these, incredible black belts who showed you stuff from VMware at VMworld comes from things that you do. So, we just picked a sample of the customers from Peter and my vantage point, but many of you continue to give us feedback jointly of what we can do to make our products the best as we think about these three worlds. Cloud. Now, we didn't talk a lot about mobile, but if I'm talking to an end user audience, that's how we want to think. And mobile to us doesn't mean just the device, a phone. It means being on the move. And the same with security. You don't have to look further than the kind of threats that we've seen with WannaCry and some of the things that have happened this week. Security is on the mind of everyone. So we look forward, Peter, with you to co-innovation. That's really the key word with every one of you. Give us feedback to our joint product folks. Thank you so much for your partnership. It's a pleasure to see you progressing in your career and doing so well. We're awfully proud of you, Peter. And we wish you all the best and to all of your customers here at Veeam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thanks for coming.
All right.
Enjoy it.